So you're looking to build a port for your Cyberpunk city, but you don't know quite where to begin. Well, in this video, I'll be sharing some of my favorite builds for making your port look amazing. Everything from containers to ships and everything in between. Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another tutorial. Today we are looking at the essentials of building a port. And at the end, we're going to have a look at a world where some of these things are already in place. And you guys can see what it all looks like when it's put together. So, without further ado, let's get started. So first up today is a very obvious one. It's the port wall. But like with any sort of building, a good foundation for your port is important. And the wall is very important because it's going to be wrapping around the entire port, right? So as an example for what I like to do with my port walls, you can texture it any which way you want. I like this combination of stony textures and things. And then what I like to do is I add in a little bit of mossy down by the waterline and maybe just creeping up the wall ever so slightly, just to give it that extra, like, you know, mossy look, I guess. Mossy, yeah. Anyway, and then also very important, you're gonna need things like fenders. So these are big tractor tires hanging on chains. These are for the bigger ships. So if you have like container ships or tankers and things coming in, then this is the kind of thing that you would want on walls where those ships are going to be docking. Also, don't forget your bulwarks. And yeah, on smaller areas where you're just going to be having, maybe it's like a marina, you wouldn't necessarily need these big tractor tires. Most boats that go into areas like that will have their own small fenders that they can use. So these are just for bigger ships. So moving on to the next one, we have containers and the like, right? You guys have seen a lot of these containers from me before, but I figured I need to show you guys a few extra things because I only had like really one type of container over there. So this one is kind of got the faded look between the concrete and the terracotta, which I like, but it can be a little overwhelming if you have it in large stacks, right? Like these ones behind here. What I do like is the shulker boxes for the doors. Just remember that if you do go far enough away, they won't render in. So bear that in mind. If you feel like shulkers are too expensive, that's also fair enough. Right, then we got some, these ones are really detailed, right? So they got like the glow signs and some buttons and everything. What I also wanted to show you guys is just that for most shipyards and things like that, you're going to need demarcations for where your containers are going to go. And the way that I've designed these ones is with it being Cyberpunk, I figured, you know, having some sort of magnet. I don't know, these felt like they could look like magnets to me. So having it like magnets where these things could snap into place when the crane comes down just, you know, ups the efficiency a little bit for those shipyards. And I think that's a cool little detail. Another way that you can do containers is like this with the wool, where you use the darker and the lighter colors to make it feel like it's recessed a little bit. So it's got like corrugation, I think is what it's called. Right, where it's got the in and out, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Also, if any of you can figure out what these things are meant to say, there's also another one down there. Please do let me know down in the comments. I'd be highly interested to see if anyone can figure out what these things are meant to represent. They do all have meanings, not this one though. Also, there are other ways that you can do containers that are a little bit more tricky. You could do them with smooth sandstone, red sandstone and stuff like that, maybe, or quartz. Right, anything where you have stairs and preferably also walls. All right, so these are two other ways that you could do with the perforations vertically and horizontally, like so. And then also don't forget about things like skips. There's also dumpsters and things like that would be very, very useful around a port area, but skips mainly are more useful for ports because ports have a lot of waste, which I know it's not great. Ports aren't great, to be honest. So they don't necessarily deal with dumpsters. They deal with skips, right? Because then a truck could just come along, pick this thing up, and take the whole thing away, and they have a higher capacity for trash. Now, as we get into one of the funner bits of this, remember that most of the vehicles are built by Captain Jack on Planet Minecraft. There's a QR code there, and there will be a link down in the description. But in this one, I figured I'd cover forklifts. Remember last time I said probably forklifts are a little bit too small and low tech, and you'd rather have things like the Behemoth or the Bezos. But, you know, forklifts are still useful, and they do add a lot of, like, machinery feel to your port, and that's important. You want your port to feel proper industrial, right? So here I've just modified 2 of Captain Jack's forklift designs that he has. Just brought them a little bit into the newer versions with like the Blackstone and the Deep Slate and all of that sort of stuff. And the glow signs, as I do, because I do love me some glow signs. And yeah, that's it. It's just forklifts. And then just like that, we're done with all the small ones and we're going on to some big boys. I swear my tutorial builds just keep getting bigger and bigger. It's like I just love pain. But anyway, so one of the main things that any port needs, and there are a few different ways that you can do these, but gantry cranes. You need gantry cranes, right? So this one is a stock standard gantry crane. You also have the ones, I'm pretty sure you've seen them, that go up and over and down again, and the ship would go in between them. Those are also good designs, but I figured this one was big enough for now, right? Like, I'll do the other one at a different time. And talking about size differences, I should probably do an airport at some point. But that's for another day. Right, so gantry crane. Also down here, it is picking up one of the detailed types of containers, right? You can make this so a 3 wide and do 3 wide containers if you want. There's lots of ways that you could manipulate this. My original one was blue with red and white stripes, but I figured this one felt a little bit more cyberpunky to me. I don't know why. Sometimes it's just a feeling, right? And speaking of cranes, this is another one that I made. This one is... I'm not even sure what you call these types of cranes, but this one is not for picking up containers or anything like that, or any kind of goods. This is a dredger, right? I guess that's what you call it, a dredger, right? Dredger crane. Although I have seen cranes like this that aren't dredgers. Now, if you're asking, what is a dredger, Derpol? Let me tell you. A dredger is basically just a big old bucket at the front here, bucket claw, and that goes down into the water and picks up trash. Because cyberpunk ports are super dirty, right? So you're gonna need a dredger to be clearing it out. And I'll show you guys in a little bit what I mean by that. I've positioned one in the other world to give you a better idea of what these can do. But they can also have their attachments swapped out. So you could have one of those claw arms for the containers if you wanted. You could also just have a hook at the front of this thing for picking up things or hooking things. I mean, you know what I mean, right? So that's a dredger crane. This thing can also be, if you take out this bottom bit that's meant to be rotatable, you could also just put them on wheels like this, right? You could put that bottom section there underneath this where this slope is, and you could have this thing on rails as well, so it looks like it can move up and down your port. But like I said, I'll get around to that in a little bit. And now for the good part. We're getting onto ships, right? So the first one that I have here is a tugboat, which isn't exactly a ship, but whatever. So just before we get started with the tugboat, original design for the tugboat was by Lauti0 on Planet Minecraft. I found this very old design. It needed quite a bit of bringing into the future, but the overall shape of it was unmistakably awesome, and I figured it was a way better use of my time using this one. So, tugboats. Tugboats are extremely important for ports because they are the foundation for all safety operations, right? Any boat that gets out of control or anything, a tugboat is there to save it. It is also there just to bring the big boys in and out of port, because their maneuverability is not always that great, right? So it's got the big rubber banding around the outside, right? Just tires or rubber or whatever. Sometimes it's rubber, nice rubber like this is meant to be, and sometimes it's just a bunch of tires, right? Depending on the size of your tugboat and the wealth of your city and your port. This is a pretty wealthy tugboat, to be honest. It's a very wealthy tugboat. It's got a little dinghy. It's got 2 separate cranes. This one's for bringing the dinghy out. That one's for hooking things and whatnot. Yeah, all in all, this is a really cool tugboat, and I highly suggest using some of this in your city because tugboats are awesome. And then we are moving on to the big boy that I've just been glancing at and kind of avoiding as much as I could up until now. And again, we should talk about it. So original design for this ship was by Atlep on Planet Minecraft. Again, me trying to come up with the shape of this thing was going to take ages, but pretty much most of these blocks have been swapped out for something else at this point. Also, Claire. Shout out to Claire from the Random Craft Discord. She helped me out with a fair bit of this one. I'll link to her Instagram for the time being down in the description as well. There are links for everything around here, right? But she made this this antenna up at the front here, which is awesome. And then yeah, this is the boat, right? So we have all of these patches down the side to make it look like it's been repaired a bunch of times. This is a very old boat. You have to remember, most of the Cyberpunk city has probably moved on from this sort of technology. This is old school tech we got over here, right? So there's no real reason to be replacing these things. You fix them until they cannot be fixed anymore, and then you move on to spaceships that can carry all of these things, right? So down here we also have patches of the red terracotta to make it look like it's been faded out. I also kept one of these empty to show you that there's, I think, 4 of these sections. That one, that one, that one, and that one, I think, have a go down into the hull. And I also have some magnets holding them in place. So yeah, all in all, I used the planar style of the container because in larger quantities like this, they do look a little bit better than the speckly ones. And also you don't want them to be over detailed because the buttons and things, they just don't mix in these one wide spaces or up against each other. Also, there's some fuel tanks up in here in certain places as well, because a lot of container ships would store a few of these up at the top when they have room for it. Then we have the rescue boats over here, not the rescue boats, the lifeboats here, which I love. Claire also did the texturing for these walls. So again, thank you very much for the help, Claire. And then we have, let's start with the helipad, right? So we have a helipad here, helicopter by Captain Jack originally. And I love the helipad. I love the way that it came out. There used to be more containers here. I figured, you know what, never mind. We put a helipad on here. It could also be for like a hovercraft or something that comes down. We have a few more containers here at the back, just because I didn't know what else to do there. And I figured it would look really lopsided if there wasn't any there with all of them up at the front. Then there are interiors in this whole thing here, right? But I didn't do too much of this. This is all Atlep's original work. So feel free to come and explore this or download his original design for seeing all of that. Something that was not on the original were the jet engine booster thingamabobbers here, which I figured, you know what, let's just slap some rockets on it. It's Cyberpunk. Just take something old, slap some rockets and stuff on it, some pipes, some weird tech, and boom, you got yourself a proper Cyberpunk looking ship. And I just have these caution tape thingamabobbers here to make sure that when you are docking, that people make sure that there shouldn't be any obstructions around this area, because the boosters will get damaged and that's not good. And then I also replaced the propeller down here with a proper booster, right? So this one doesn't actually turn with a rudder. It's more, it uses the boosters to turn, which, to be fair, is kind of overkill because a rudder is a lot cheaper than these boosters, but the boosters also help it to go a little bit faster. So I guess it's a win-win. And then up here, I also swapped out the chimney for one of those energy chimney thingamabobbers that, why do I keep saying thingamabobbers today? It's a new thing, apparently. I used a similar design to the smokestacks, the gas energy power plant stack things that I did for the industrial tutorial. So now that we've seen all of the individual parts, how about we head on over and see what they all look like when they're put together. And the first thing that I'd like to point out here is scaling, right? I built this port entirely too small. About the little front tip that you can see that's sticking out from the fog there, that comes up to there, right? Right at the end of this wall. This port is not nearly big enough, so it's out there. It's about to crash, so the tugboat's helping it, but I'll show you guys that in a second, right? So, for those of you that don't know, this is New Valhalla City. It's also available for download on my Ko-fi page, so go check that out. And while you're at it, hit the like if you guys are finding any of this valuable in any kind of way. And moving on. So, here we have the container yard, right? Quite a small one, to be fair, but it does the job, right? We got a couple of the Bezos. They're picking up. This one's putting down onto a flying truck. That one is putting down from somewhere else. This one's moving things around. The behemoth. That behemoth is putting onto a truck. And the gantry crane is also just moving stuff around for now. Because there's no boat in here. There's no boat in there. So it can't really take anything and move it around. But here we have the dredger, right? And also the last one on the list, which I'll show you guys in a second. But the dredger is here because it can swing out to about here. It can pick up all the trash that accumulates in this corner over here, right? And there will be more dredgers eventually all over the place. I do intend on just keep adding onto this, and I'll also make this port probably a lot longer over time. But yeah, this is kind of how things look when they're put together, right? And we also have a little parking lot here with some some forklifts and this Muppet for some reason. Anyway, the final one on our list for today is dry docks, right? Dry docks are super important for most ports. It's especially useful or especially important to not forget to put them into shipyards, but even a port needs one. So this port doesn't really accommodate for like big ships like the container ship over there to come into dry dock. This is not a shipyard, this is just a port, but every port needs at least a little dry dock that they can work on their own support of vehicles like this tugboat that is down here busy getting worked on. So we come down here, you can see that it's on the chocks, right? And it's got drainage and all that sort of stuff. And that is pretty much it. I was starting here with a rail because I am eventually going to add one of these on a rail here as well, because the rail one will likely be dealing with the dry dock, while this one is going to be a dredger that is picking up trash from here. But that is pretty much how all of these things fit together. And as you can see here, this tugboat is coming in to give this big boy a little nudge so that it doesn't crash into my slime factory. But yeah, that is gonna do it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. So if you guys enjoyed it, please do leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already for more of these tutorials, and as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic day and see you. And if you haven't yet, go watch the industrial video next, ties into this one.